Okay, Zaval, the game is up. It's time to face justice for your crimes.
Foolish mortal, you think you can take on the might of an Eternal One alone? You haven't even been keeping up with your Corthia rep. I will destroy you.
Yeah, but that's where you're wrong, Zoval, because it's not just me that you have to deal with. Together, Evie and I are gonna take you down. Isn't that right, Evie? There's no time for chat, Evie. Let's go for Azeroth!
Is everything okay?
Yes, fine, hang on. Evie, do you need to go over the plan again?
Do you want to maybe come back and try this again later?
I think that would be best, yeah. Oh no!
Knowledge is power.
Hello, Internet, Taliesin here, and welcome to another episode of the Weekly Reset. Taliesin and Evitel's Wondrous Wisdomshow. In a week where once again we have more new features coming in patch 9.15 to catch up on, which we will absolutely talk about. But before that, Internet, we have to discuss the main controversy that the community has been embroiled in for the last couple of weeks now, which has pretty much overshadowed everything. And I must warn you, it is polarizing, it is often bewildering, and it's coming for your children. I am, of course, talking about Censorgate, or Boobgate, or Fruitgate, or Love Rocket Gate, or whatever gate you fancy. I don't mind, it just has to be a gate. That's how we name things on the internet, okay? The accusation that Blizzard are trawling through its almost 2 decades of content and censoring and desexualizing itself for reasons. And this isn't a YouTuber clickbait moment, okay? This accusation is real and it's incredibly loud. Censorship is what this is, nothing else. Disgusting censorship. This is just the tip of the authoritarian iceberg. This is censorship. And Internet, you better believe that I hate censorship, so we are going to talk about it, and you might be surprised by some of my opinions. Now, of course, there is no denying that all of this comes off the back of the recent shocking revelations that a game company formed and built by a bunch of 90s dude bros allegedly turned out to have been a cesspit of harassment and discrimination against, well, everyone, but especially women and ethnic minorities. A shitstorm which is, of course, still raging, with Activision Blizzard King now being sued by no less than 3 different bodies. Most recently, the SEC are throwing subpoenas around like sweets at a kid's birthday party, including into the lap of everyone's favorite figurehead of useless parasitic capitalism, Bobby Kotick, and throughout which the company still have not responded to the demands of their workforce on how to tackle these problems, which would certainly seem to cut to the very core of the organization like an especially maggot-infested wound. And it never stops. Every week, new stories are told. My favorite this episode is a screenshot from the internal Blizz Slack channel in which a male employee refers to one of his female colleagues as shrill, which, okay, it's not up there with the worst tales of actual sexual assault that we've seen, but I don't know, man. At this sensitive time, it's just not a great look to adopt the most comically stereotypical old-school misogynistic language to describe the women in your workplace, you know? Like, presumably, further down the thread, he told her not to worry her pretty little head about it and attempted to calm the situation by telling an awesome joke about how broads are terrible at parallel parking. It shows how much work the company has got to do on a personal as well as systemic level, and it's depressing. And there is no doubt that for many players, Blizzard have a big hill to climb to prove that they are initiating and achieving positive change. And honestly, the most important changes that Activision Blizzard can make would be to workplace practices and structures that we, the general public, would never see, and which would make pretty boring headlines if we did, which is exactly why it's important to keep listening to the voices of employees from within the company. But there are more obvious public signs that we can be on the lookout for too, such as ABK showing a firm commitment to aiding and complying with those 3 cases against them in a genuine effort to expose the truth, and not, you know, aggressively denying any wrongdoing and shredding documents relevant to those cases. Oh no. Okay, fine, Activision Blizzard King are a massive evil corporation and they don't care if you live or die. I get it. But what about Team 2? What about World of Warcraft? What about this game that I like so much that I spent a good 10 minutes one day putting this image behind me together before then having printed out on 5mm foam board? Well, from what we, the public, have been able to see, not much. There's been the departure of some names mentioned in the California harassment and discrimination case, those that weren't quietly moved out before the case became public anyway. And gradually, NPC and other references to those guys, including zone names in some cases, are being removed from the game, which, as a gesture is, I guess, about as much as you could hope for, to go alongside the boring internal rebuilding. But it would seem, judging by recent changes on the PTR at least, that Blizzard are choosing some less obvious targets too. Over the last 2 weeks, data mining websites have picked up on a number of updates that would certainly seem connected to everything that we've been talking about so far. First of all, we had 2 paintings in Karazhan, both of women, changed. One lady went from thirsty Instagram pic to LinkedIn profile, while another went from OnlyFans thumbnail to a bowl of fruit. Which, I mean, it's a change, certainly. And now you get the joke at the beginning of this episode. And yes, it was a shit show, obviously. What an ironic way to show that you are a progressive company, by covering up women. Nothing says respecting women like telling the harlots to cover up their sinful skin. I mean, were the devs also sexually harassing the paintings? Jaina will wear hijab next expansion. They are going full woke. I'm going to be coming back to all these comments, don't worry, but not yet, because this week, super rare and annoying mount, the Big Love Rocket, had its name changed to X45 Heartbreaker, and its icon updated to look like the actual mount, and obviously that was a shit show. Feels like we're going a couple of centuries back in time with these changes. Medieval nonsense produced by activists and Blizzard. Those crazy, literally see sexual motifs everywhere. Their mind is broken. Yes, only the most broken mind could possibly read any sexual motif into the big pink love rocket, that's for sure. But that's not all, because also this week, the twin consorts, penultimate bosses of the Throne of Thunder raid, which is, I would say, 8 years old at this point, had their name and description changed on the PTR. They are now the Twin Imperium. So what do you think about that? It was a shit show, obviously. At this point, it's just absurd. There's nothing offensive about 96% of the stuff that's being censored. What's wrong with the word consort? Prince Philip was the consort of Queen Elizabeth. And that is both a very good and very bad point. Bad because, honestly, if you want to show something is unoffensive, generally comparing it to Prince Philip isn't going to be a great way to prove your point, you know? But the definition of consort, as in, like, the spouse of a monarch, is spot on. This isn't concubine or some shit that we're talking about, okay? Consort is not an offensive or demeaning word or thing to be. And if you don't want to take my word for it, then take Christy Goldens, who chimed in on Twitter to say the exact same thing. And I feel like this is very important to point out, because what's so weird and bewildering about all of this is that all of these changes, with the possible exception of the Big Love Rocket, because, you know, it's a knob, are things that literally no one in the player base was ever offended by, which makes these changes feel random in a confusing and almost scary way, because if these things are offensive, enough to remove from the game, well, basically everything is, right? All emotes disabled, all skimpy transmog removed, no gender choice in character screen, all prior dialogue sanitized, jokes of suggestive nature are instant bans, tone polymorph, fruit introduced unironically, cats and dogs living together, mass hysteria, which all means it is genuinely worth asking the question, why? Why are these changes quietly being made on the PTR at all? What good does it do? Or what good does Blizzard think it does? And with Blizz not giving us any specific reasons as yet, the community has been left to fill in the blanks ourselves, which always ends extraordinarily well. So we as a community have come up with a number of possible explanations. One, that all of these changes are a PR move to make it look like the company are addressing misogyny in their work environment. A performative, surface level act which are designed to get them brownie points while they may or may not be doing the actual important work to sort out their shit. And this, anecdotally, appears to be the most common opinion online, and it stems from an incredibly understandable cynicism around the company on this issue. A cynicism that I absolutely share. F these guys. But I have to say, I don't think that's what's happening here. If these changes really were an attempt by Blizz to show us how great and progressive and committed to change they are, I've been doing this for a while now, and usually when Blizz want praise for something, they announce it. Or they at least mention it, just like they have all of the other features in 9.15. There has been no shortage of announcements from Blizzard about the new patch in the last couple of weeks to tell us about stuff that they think we will like. Being public is kind of an important part of public relations exercises, but the paintings and the Love Rocket and the consorts are all undocumented changes that have been data mined by third-party sites. Blizzard has not mentioned them. Also, like I say, this is all stuff that literally no one in the player base cared about in the first place or has ever asked to be changed. So again, changing them doesn't really feel like it's being done for the public to me. 2, this is all part of a desexualization of the game to make it comply with new Chinese regulations so that they can keep doing a WoW in China. And this definitely isn't true. In part because Blizz have always changed the Chinese version of the game loads to comply with regulations there anyway, and those changes, considerably bigger than a painting in Karazhan, have never found their way onto the Western clients. So why would these ones? Also, if this were for the Chinese market, why would they change the English name and description of twin consorts instead of, the Chinese version? And also, if they were changing the whole game for those reasons, these still seem like odd choices since, like I say, they aren't offensive to anyone. 3, and this is my favorite explanation, this entire exercise is part of a culture war that Blizzard are waging against their own player base, pandering to the woke sujwas at the expense of core gamers for reasons unexplained. And you might think I'm exaggerating for comic effect here, but seriously, I know sujwas are enjoying this. More pandering, yay! This overreaction to the woke mob outrage is embarrassing. What useless virtue signaling! WoW's marketing department may want to review the results of Gillette's Sujwa campaign. This just doesn't really fly either, for the pretty important reason that I've mentioned quite a few times now, that no one has ever been offended by these things that they are changing. I think most of you would probably consider me a pretty woke kind of Sujwa kind of soy boy kind of guy, which I can't really disagree with because I wouldn't consider any of those terms insults, frankly. I advocate for workers' unions and public ownership of important services. I hate the unregulated excesses of capitalism. I would happily put my pronouns in my Twitter bio were it not for the fact that the T&E Twitter account is for both of us, so we'd have to put he, him, she, her, which would be kind of needlessly confusing for everyone. And I have never been offended by the paintings in Karazhan, or the name of the twin consorts, or the big old throbbing knob gag, although granted that one is a bit of an outlier, because it is, a knob. So okay, maybe someone has been offended by that, I don't know, but sorry culture war dudes, you cannot blame the wokes for any of the others because no one was offended by them. Let's be honest, no one even knew about them. If this wasn't a WoW video and I showed you these, less than 1% of you would even have been able to tell me what game they came from. So if it's not PR, and it's not China, and it's not the Sujwas, who is to blame for these frankly baffling decisions? Who asked for this? Honestly, we don't know, which is why this is so weird and such excellent meme material, because it's just baffling. But for what it's worth, here's what I think happened. And this is not based on any inside knowledge or anything, okay? This is just the first thing that I thought when the paintings got swapped, and it's only being reinforced by the consorts. These changes are so random that actually they feel weirdly specific, and I think there's probably, in both cases, some internal story connected to them. A story that we don't know about, which I don't think we'll ever know about, and which frankly, I don't want to know about. Something like, if I had to imagine it, some douchey dude bro who thought he was a rock star would join in the Drunken Friday cube crawl and would always remind one particular female employee that he based that particular painting in Karazhan on her, so that he could admire her talents whenever he wanted to in-game. It's just bants, guys. No need to be shrill about it. That there was some slimy piece of shit who used to refer to a couple of women who worked under him as his twin consorts, and thought it was really funny when he put it in the game, so they could continue to be uncomfortable and humiliated forever. That's what these changes feel like to me. And I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong, because I hope no employees had to go through anything like the shit that I just described. But because these things are so random and yet specific and generally unoffensive to the rest of the public, it feels to me like this has to have some basis in a specific case of harassment that the team themselves are changing entirely for their own sake. And honestly, if that's the case, I'm absolutely fine with it. Obviously, because I'm not a monster, but also because whether that's happened or not, none of these changes make the game worse. Like, Undeniably, it seems ridiculous to me to change the name of the Consorts, but it doesn't make the game worse. It is objectively funny to change a blotchy low-res paint lady into a bowl of fruit, but I absolutely don't buy that it's even more offensive to women to change it. This is a super interesting and incredibly nuanced topic, but generally be very wary of those looking to co-opt the language of oppression to further their own non-progressive causes. Especially when this still exists, and honestly, no, I don't think they're coming for the transmog, and frankly, I don't know how helpful it is to discuss this subject as if they already have come for the transmog, you know? And look, if we wake up tomorrow and these glorious, glistening, living wet dreams are dressed in hemp sacks, then you better believe we will be revisiting this topic with gusto. But until then, and with everything considered, I'd like to stop pretending that I care about my first horny drawing getting changed now, if that's okay. Especially when there's other actual news to talk about. Evitel? Oh, come on, I absolutely reserve the right to indulge in fruit memes for the rest of time. Don't you take away my fruit memes. I spent the whole news section talking about censorship.
Oh.
And freedom of speech.
Right.
And boobs.
Nice.
Do you have anything to add to that subject?
Ha! It's funny that you ask, Tally. I mean, what does any of that count for if my voice was not heard in any of it?
There was many sections with Evitel. There was a bit where you were standing there and just normally in your clothes, a bit where you were like on the chaise lounge.
Yeah.
Or kind of like laid out and stuff. But
Yeah.
it was deemed just too sexy, so we had to change it, and it's gone now.
Yeah.
You'll never see it.
Sorry, guys.
So
as someone who comes from an art background, all these discussions I thought were really, really interesting because, you know, this is something we come up against in the art world. Like, you get female nudes and stuff, and we think about how we handle them, especially when they're painted pretty much exclusively by men for the pleasure of other men. Important thing is just to like really talk about it and just be aware of it. Now, when I found out that the portraits in WoW had changed, I was quite happy, actually. Well, one, I didn't know they existed before.
are you a communist?
Yes. I was just happy to see some updated pixels because the early ones are just, they're not great, are they?
Sure, no, I know. And like also in museums, it's slightly different. They are kind of important works of art from history, whereas like if it was the museum director who had painted paintings of women that he was putting up and then had harassed people,
Exactly.
it would be a slightly different issue, I
So,
guess. So like the museum comparison isn't a great one.
No,
in that respect.
so as excited as I was to see some of these conversations come up on like WoW Twitter, I was like, also guys, these are literally just some really, really old, tiny, tucked away pictures from WoW. The question around these kind of things is like, who made it and who is it for?
I do think it's hilarious and stupid. I think in a way it's clearly done more bad than good just because it's given people ammunition to be against any kind of progressive kind of changes at all. I just can't shake the feeling that a lot of the men kind of taking up the position of, oh, Blizz are showing women that they should be ashamed of their bodies and stuff like that. I can't help feeling that literally every single one of them a few months ago was tweeting about, you know, how wrong and bad hot tub streamers are.
Yeah.
You know, and I just feel like it just feels like
It's kind of impossible, isn't it? Now, you know what would actually make me mad? If those were nude portraits of ladies in WoW that had been created by female game devs who were like, we want more representation of female bodies in WoW.
Yeah.
And they were taken out then that would be a good reason to be angry. And we wouldn't have known if it wasn't data mined.
So it's Wowhead's fault.
Wow, Wowhead!
Well,
Look what you've done.
Speaking of Wowhead, right? Because, like I say, I spent my entire week. Now we spent the whole sofa section talking about this as well. But there are other stories in WoW this week. What's your favourite Warlord of Draenor dungeon?
I don't know, because I never played Warlords of Draenor.
That was a very bad question.
I literally skipped it,
Well,
and I watched you play it.
Have you ever done any Warlords of Draenor time walking?
Nope,
Well,
never.
maybe now you will,
I know.
because it's been revealed that they are adding the best, in my opinion, Warlords of Draenor dungeon to time walking, the one that was inexplicably never there before, Grimrail Depot, which is awesome. It's like
I can
such
remember
a
you
good
doing that
dungeon.
one.
It's so ridiculous.
Can't wait. I am actually going to play some WoD now.
And Utgard Keep in Wrath of the Lich King
Nice.
time walking. And this all has sparked speculation now that we have official confirmation that the Mage Tower is coming back, and official confirmation of the rewards for the Mage Tower. It's all going to be standardized gear, so like it will be of a set. You can't outgear it. It will be like, I've got a feeling it's probably going to be a bit easier than most people would like, but that's what people thought about Mage Tower in the first place. It turned out to be quite hard. And
I thought it was hard.
those old Tomb of Sargeras recolors are the the rewards, just as we speculated.
Pretty cool.
But there is also that fell werebear specifically. Blizzard's
So
reasoning
jealous.
being that there is nothing else like that in the game.
Yeah.
To which I would say, great reason to have it, but what about the flails for Prot Warrior and Prot Paladin as well? Because there's nothing like those in the game either.
Flails?
Getting them involved, yeah. Like
Flailing?
I take great pleasure in dual wielding my flails as a Fury Warrior now,
cute.
and like everyone should have that joy.
Yeah.
But it has made us think, like it's a shame that this will only be available 3 times of the year. Like Mage Tower and Legion Mythic Plus as
Feels
well.
a bit unfair, doesn't
Exactly,
it?
and like the conversation around the community at the moment is very much, I think, in favour of, look, why isn't there just always a time walking up? Every week should be a time walking week of some sort, like
I'm down.
cycling through the expansions that way.
down.
And, because I'm sure the devs have nothing else. If the devs could just stop turning things into fruit just for 1 second
And
and instead do some actual work, then they could make all dungeons in time walking Mythic Plus dungeons, like they're going to do with Legion, and then Mythic Plus would be saved.
Days and weeks of work changing those assets must have taken, and I mean the entire team.
Well, changing the names, changing the name of a boss.
Yeah.
Well, it's the reason why 9.3 isn't out yet. That's for sure.
Yeah. Can we get some male nudes in there too? I'm just saying.
You know what I think? I think like all of the old armor, because people are. Oh, I can't believe we're back on this. But people are all like, they're coming for transmog. They're not coming for transmog, are they?
No.
But like, wouldn't it be cool if there were some changes to transmog, and rather than taking anything away, they kept the skimpy sets for women, but also gave them the option to equip the male sets, which are covering,
100%.
and also gave the males the option to equip the skimpy sets.
100%.
Like,
And
why not that? That's awesome.
I think that would be so good.
Like, that would take exactly as much effort as renaming the twin consorts.
Exactly.
So why don't you just why didn't you just do that?
This is why everyone is waiting for Night Elf Heritage Armor. Like,
Well, if Night Elf Heritage Armor
you know
comes
what it
out,
is,
if it's not
actually.
like, Hot Elf Summer,
Yeah.
then it's going to be incredibly disappointing.
Maybe,
the good news
maybe
is,
that's what's holding the game up. Maybe that's what's holding things
The
up.
good news is you ain't never getting Elf Heritage Armor.
I know.
The good news is
When
you're
it
never
come-
going to have that disappointment,
Oh my
so it's going to
God.
be absolutely
It's
fine.
never coming, is it? It's never coming.
I feel like Blizz have to own this, They have to
Yeah.
like have a new toy in the game that turns like people into fruit.
They
And it was and like the description of the toy can be they were too sexy. But it works on men and women.
it has to.
And Taurus bosses are easy to solo, okay? That's the news.
yeah,
Good.
nice,
I'm
nice.
glad that you joined us this week. It was brilliant.
Oh,
and
what a
I
week.
promise next week we won't talk about any more evil censorship unless there's been more evil censorship, in which
Exactly.
case, Blizz, we're coming for you. Like you're coming for all my sexy gear. And also Speedos for Kultiran males. Make it happen.
Oh my God. can
Why
you
is that not
imagine?
in the game? Why are Kultiran males in shorts when they should be wearing Speedos? But thank you for joining us today. If you were allowed to hear everything we said, and if YouTube didn't censor it all out, because we're too close to the truth. If you like this video, don't thank us. Thank our patrons who give their actual real life money to make all of our videos happen, whether they be World of Warcraft videos or other videos, and also streams as well.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to do anything without them.
Literally nothing.
We would be censored.
They were.
They allow us to beat the censorship. Thank you for giving us your money every month. Thank you for buying all of our protein supplements that we sell and our freedom water.
Thank you, yeah.
If you didn't like it, downvote the shit out of it. Remember, my name is Joseph McCarthy.
Ooh, edgy one.
No, my name is Taliesin. For now. From me.
And a bowl of fruit.
Until next time, cheerio. If there is a next
Oh,
time,
no.
because we haven't been removed. Too close to the truth.